Okay, our last point, our last discussion, going back to some of the workflows about reporting. Part of especially the senior SOC analyst is creating reports that can be consumed. And reports, right here under the respond menu, are based on, if this looks very, very familiar, based on visualized dashboards. Same exact list, right? We're going to want to create some dashboards that give us the specific things we want to see, we want to measure from week to week or month to month or day to day, whatever it is. Now, we do have some canned reports. And if anyone has feedback on the canned reports and how to improve them, please let us know, right? These are ones we created. So let us know if you want something improved. And I would just like to talk about, let's go, maybe we can get some fun data. I have no idea what's going to show up here under the reports. Let's just make sure I don't have anything showing up, but PCI compliance. And of course, everything here is 0. CIS compliance. These are all very, very boring. License usage. All right, I'm going to go with custom. So there might be, okay, now I'm wondering what I've done wrong. But if I have a report, oh man, do I have a filter? If anyone can see, let me know. Like, am I missing something? Why is nothing showing up at all? Oh man, do I have a filter? If anyone can see, let me know. Like, am I missing something? Why is nothing showing up at all? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It only happens to me 5 times a day, so if it happens to you, don't worry. Thank you. I was looking around. I missed it. All right. So I have this report. I like this report. If I export the report right now as a PDF file, when I export it as a PDF, that all the queries up here will be applied. Oh, it's downloading. Okay. So there were more records than like 10. So it's also now asking me to download the CSV file of the individual records. Cool. So I can close that. Let's remove the query to make something prettier. Or I can schedule file of the individual records. Cool. So I can close that. Let's remove the query to make something prettier. Or I can schedule a report. I obviously have to give it a name. I learned my lesson. I'm going to give it a month. And do I want this report to run against multiple tenants, all tenants? Like, what do I need? Potentially, I may need to schedule a report for each individual tenant. It's going to depend on my needs. Maybe I'll run it against $Cyber. And, who do I want to email this to? There is the list of saved recipients under system recipients, or I can just type, if I can type. There it goes. I have to hit return nut. Now, what time range? Because, there's a time range it can type. There it goes. I have to hit return nut. Now, what time range? Because, there's a time range. It's kind of grayed out. I hope you can see it this past week. But this report doesn't know what your GUI is. So you have to tell it. I actually want to run this every 24 hours, whatever the report is. Oh, that's interesting. That's new, actually. I'm changing it, and it's changing it. Interesting. I did not realize there was that connection. I think this is some new user interface goodness. Very cool. And if it's for 24 hours, probably I want to run it daily, or, I can tweak that. I can decide when I want it to run. Obviously, do not run all of your reports at the exact same time, the exact same day, or things are going to go weird. Asset tags. This is a convenience. A customer wanted reports based on that asset tagging that we were talking about. This is a convenience. A customer wanted reports based on that asset tagging that we were talking about under asset analytics. Although, to be clear, you could also create a query. You could combine those together, but if it is based on asset tag, boom, 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 how big? And then you're looking at a report in the GUI that has whatever queries, but the system is not going to have the GUI, so you may need to tell it what query to run on. And yes, it just tweaked the back-end display to show you what you're seeing. So again, we make our queries, we test our queries under threat hunting, alerts, or whatever, and then we reuse them again and again. That is the power of saved queries. To reiterate, you start with, then we reuse them again and again. That is the power of saved queries. To reiterate, you start with query string, and then when you get comfortable, you start adding based on fielding. All right. Now that I can just save the report, and this is going to run every so often. And we can just take a look at other ones, respond, scheduled reports. This is something that caught me for like a month, thinking that scheduled reports is where I scheduled reports. No, this is where you look at the reports that have been previously scheduled with the schedule button under report. All right, so we have these and we can edit them, right? Once we create a report, we can send the report now just to test that we did everything correctly, right? Very, very usable, nice feature. So that's reports. Allows us to now just to test that we did everything correctly, right? Very, very usable, nice feature. So that's reports. Allows us to compare week to week, all that good stuff that reports do. And to run the report, we might have a save query to limit things for different tenants. We actually could, in an individual query, limit to a specific tenant or limit, we could do a lot, but for convenience, there's also the pull downs. So now let's talk about creating a dashboard. All right. Remember about an hour ago that I mentioned under threat hunting library, all of these are dashboards. And if you like a particular dashboard, let's say DNS resolution by name. And let me just say, like a particular dashboard, what I actually mean is like a particular chart, but like a particular dashboard is its own useful dashboard. What I actually mean is like a particular chart, but like a particular dashboard is its own useful thing. You can clone any of these dashboards. You can clone every dashboard I've actually looked at. There may be some in there that are somehow special. So don't quote me on that, but I'm going to say easily 98% of the dashboards are clonable. There might be like an exception somewhere that requires some kind of special user interface magic to allow it to work. And there's a question, can we create custom threat hunting dashboards? Why, of course, you just create a dashboard. Will they show up under the threat hunting library? No, but they will show up under your custom dashboard. Right. And now this system is a bit insane because so many people are creating dashboards and there's a crazy huge number of, in actual customer systems, there are not that many, but you can create a custom dashboard for threat hunting on the topics you care about, on the issues you care about, which is what we're talking about right now. So did that get at the meat of what you were asking about? And feel free to chat it, or you can put it in the Q&A, either way. Yeah, you can create all kinds of dashboards. So the easiest thing is to clone, which once again, like a cooking show, I cloned. Actually, I didn't clone this. Actually, I think I cloned this. Fine. I'm going to clone one just to show you how easy it is. Boom, clone. All right. Now we go to visualize. Oh, we're already in visualize dashboards. Let's scroll down, training. All right, here's all the stuff. And now I can, all right, here's all the stuff. And now I can begin to edit. I can edit this clone. Like that DNS resolution, don't care about that. Don't care about that. I can move this over. I can rearrange, maybe decide to add something in that we're going to talk about. All right. Or I can create a dashboard. By the way, we are in the process. There may be some, attempting a community support of dashboards. Remember, dashboards are made of charts that different customers have found useful and are willing to share with other customers. And you can actually import a dashboard. It's a community support of dashboards. Remember, dashboards are made of charts that different customers have found useful and are willing to share with other customers. And you can actually import a dashboard. It's a JSON file that defines, all the components. So that's something we are supporting. The idea, the goal is that you could go to GitHub and see different types of dashboards that meet different requirements and that we all work together to make life better. All right, so now I'm going to create a new dashboard and show you, let's say I want to create a new dashboard. Best practice, start out at 2300. And now when I edit, all those dashboards everywhere else that I loved, all those charts that I want to bring together, edit. All those dashboards everywhere else that I loved, all those charts that I want to bring together, add a save chart. Boop. And just remember where you saw it. I suspect this chart is getting reused, but that's where I saw it. Now I can make this whatever size I want. And you can bring together all these different charts that you might want to. Sometimes the finding the little GUI part obnoxious. There it is. Awesome. So you can bring together all the different charts from all the different dashboards to quickly make a report that gives you the information that you want to track in a regular system. And this is the easiest way to make a new dashboard. I like this, I like that. I'm going to put them together. And actually now, in the way to make a new dashboard. I like this, I like that. I'm going to put them together. And actually now in 430, 431, you can actually manage, the charts, and we can see that, and this may become a task, look at this, a bunch of stuff. We can edit individual charts where they exist, or, at some point, someone's going to have to clean this up. That one's not being used. That one's not being used. That's me, so I know I can clean it up. We can actually manage the charts now. All right, so diving in a little deeper of looking at data, let's take a look at, my example earlier. I have these alerts, and I want to build some kind of dashboard related to some specific topic. And I want to build some kind of dashboard related to some specific topic. For example, if I look at dashboards and I look at, let's find it. Someone took a look, decided these were interesting things to measure about F5 Silverline. We can see it in the title, F-line Silverline. So we have these violations, we have violation rating, but for that particular one, no activity. Attack type. How did that happen? Well, let me show you. The key is to, one, start with the correct index. Now, my example is the whole plug and play thing. So I have all of these, maybe over the last 5 hours, whatever the time coming in. Maybe I want to look over the past week. All right. But the key is to, so I have all of these, maybe over the last 5 hours, whatever the time coming in. Maybe I want to look over the past week. All right. But the key is to dive into the data and think about what you're trying to capture. So you'll look at one record. I prefer it this way under details. Some people prefer to expand individual records. It's what works for you. Now, what I can tell you is, the event data, the event data, the event data. I know that's from Windows, from my experience. But if you're dealing with this for the first time, you're going to have to look at a bunch of records, right? You're going to have to look at, Windows, event data, class ID, volume snapshot. How does this compare to the details I see in the, source record? Or if I'm a Windows security expert, how does this all kind of make sense, right? It requires a degree of domain knowledge. And that's why it's a, task for a level 3 kind of, or a senior SOC analyst. But you go through and you look for different values. And you're like, what's a class name looks interesting. Do I want description? Oh, let me look at something else. And you have to go through the data and look at it and think about what it is you want to represent. Now, I mentioned that the Interflow Dictionary provides you a quick view of the data. So we could, start to look at this, right? We could look for event data, class name. Oh, well, that's kind of interesting. So these are the different values, but sometimes the data isn't there. So we might make a dashboard actually for troubleshooting analysis as opposed to reporting, right? So this class data one looks kind of interesting. All right, so let's start thinking about a dashboard. Let's go ahead and open up the dashboard in a new tab. This is something I do, flipping back and forth between threat hunting of my desired index and, the data as I create my dashboard. You know what? There's a good question coming in. I just want to get through this and then, start answering questions. But here, the first thing I like to do is I generally like to create a chart that shows me a total so that I can use that as a visual reference for everything else, as a sanity check, right? Notice I'm reusing that query. Notice I'm going against the alerts index, and it's just a count. So this was a new counter. I created a counter. So I know how many total are there. The next thing, what do I want to slice and dice the data as? So I have this new pie chart. What did I do? Hey, still going against the alerts data, still using the save queries, still using that same query, because this is what I'm caring about. I'm caring about, in this specific example, all of the plug and play devices that were plugged into critical servers. All right, let's go next. And I want this pie chart to show me who was affected the most. All right, so that is term. I could make some number ranges, it gets more complicated, but term is generally the easiest. All right, what field do I filter on? Well, let me take a look at my original data. let me take a look at the details. What thing do I want to filter on? Well, let's take a look at key fields first. Filter on. Well, let's take a look at key fields first. All right. So sensor, source host. All right. What's going to be source host? Let's take a look at the source data. I'm looking through and HTTP. All right. That's the host name right there. And I also know that this is going to be an IP address in some of the examples because I've been using the system a little bit. All right. That's a good thing to trigger on. So I'm going to use host IP host to get the host name, to make it more human readable. I could also use just host IP. That's one of those fields in the record. We can go find it. Yeah, host IP. But is the IP address going to be useful to me, or is the name going to be useful to me? You're going to have to decide based on your network system. Heck, you could potentially have two of them to map them out or whatnot, or you could add the chart at the bottom. The case may be. All right. So based on host IP, boom, boom, boom. And notice the number 4, That's why I like the counters, just to help me quality check. All right, so now in my dashboard, I want to see what else is going on. I'm looking at the different pieces of data. I'm looking at the event class name, or event device ID, or whatever the case may be for that specific kind of data. That's the biggest challenge with dashboards, is figuring out what you want to look at, right? It took some time for someone to look through the individual, records from F5 Silverline and then decide, what's interesting? Violations, violation rating. This is where our expertise as security analysts, as security professionals, begins to bear on the overall situation. And this is where, no machine learning is going to be able to just create the dashboard we want to see, because we have to decide what it is we want to see. All right, so going back. So I was interested in, I was noticing some deviation. And I've actually done this in a security analysis situation. Like, you can create a dashboard really quick just for I'm seeing all these alerts and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, just to literally visualize your data for a very specific time period, right? We have some of these built-in ones that help you, if I can do it with the interflow dictionary, or I can do it with these, that's great, saves me time. But sometimes there's just so much data. I need to create a dashboard and I have to look at some of the things I'm seeing. I'm like, well, I'm seeing some of this and some of that. All right, I'm going to create a chart in a dashboard so that I get some good count. So, what's your preference? Oop, didn't mean to catch that. So what's your preference? Do you want a bar chart? Do you want do you want a pie chart? Do you want a bar chart? That's going to be based on what you want. So you just, click the chart and then you start, filling out the details. Let's go take a look at a bar chart. Notice now I'm looking at Windows events. Now here, I could select different events. It would be totally reasonable. Windows events, syslog events, Linux events. If I'm looking at something that exists on these different systems, a common name. For example, I have some piece of software that outputs consistent log statement, log fields that exist on different things. So you just have to think about what it actually makes sense to select here. What does not necessarily make sense is Windows events and alerts, right? Alerts are derived from all the other various indices. All right. And notice I'm using the same very, very simple query. Just by taking this query and applying it to a different index, and then deciding what I want to slice and dice. So this is a bar chart, very similar to a pie chart. Again, I'm looking at a term, and I noticed, how did I notice? I was looking at these articles. I was looking at these individual raw events. I'm like, class name is looking interesting. As I look at the different data, I wonder how many of the different class names are showing up. All right, let me create a chart. I'm going to do it on a term, class name, count. I'm going to just start with the top 15. Maybe later I increase it. It's all good. I can make it fancy. I can put nice labels for the executive report, but right now I'm just building this for me. And I can take a look. And I can see, wow, USB has a lot of them. And this is the same value as a pie chart. Really, it comes down to how you want to visualize and interact with the data. But this is actually a kind of interesting observation that Visualizer gives you. So keypad, mouse, net, USB drive, those are all 2, but why is that's USB device versus USB? And so there's some relationships in this data I can now start diving into. And let me also point out, as some of you have no doubt noticed, maybe this USB insert ID, because I was kind of reusing it, it was getting double applied, but maybe if what I actually care about is USB insert ID, maybe there's something more specific I should look at, right? Maybe this query needs to be edited to, get down to something that's actually a USB drive. Or maybe my server should never be having some other plug and play device inserted into it. So I want the most general thing possible to be detected on. I can't make that call for you, but this is the iterative process to bring it back to the first module, that continuous improvement process that we are going to go through every day, every week, every month. So that is the end of my lecture, opening the floor to any questions about any of these topics or beyond. There is a question, can you please explain any endpoint security dashboard? Okay, there's a trend micro EDR dashboard. Let's take a look. Well, let's go look under threat hunting. I'm not seeing trend micro. Oh, that's making things harder. So let's take a look at CrowdStrike, right? So in general, these are the events coming in. This is exactly what I described. Let us go with, where is it? Boop, boop, boop. So someone's exactly what I described. Let us go with, where is it? Boop, boop, boop. So someone took a look at the kind of records that were coming in and took a guess at what end users might want. And now between you and me, the people creating the dashboards are not necessarily users of the particular product. Looked at what kind of data was being fed into Stellar Cyber from CrowdStrike and created a dashboard just based on the data coming in. And notice, apparently process type didn't turn out to be as useful as perhaps that person thought. So these can always be improved. Suggestions from actual practitioners using this as to what would be useful is always always welcome. So in terms of a particular dashboard, by all means, please communicate with customer success. Please communicate with your Stellar Cyber representative or systems engineers, and let us share the goodness with everybody. So I hope I have answered your question. The question, I'm not entirely sure. If you could please let me know one way or another. But there's a lot kind of, embedded in that question I've tried to touch on. All right.